I thought I knew the woman I was about to marry, but one flash drive changed everything and made me disappear from her life without a single word. Picture this. You're 3 weeks away from your wedding day. The invitations are sent, the venue is booked, and you're counting down the days until you marry your best friend. Then you come home early from work to surprise your fiancé with dinner, and instead, you find a package at your door that destroys everything you believed about the person you love. That's exactly what happened to me. My name is Jake, and I was 28 when my entire world collapsed in the span of 30 minutes. Sarah and I had been together for 4 years, engaged for 8 months, and I genuinely believed we were soulmates. She was everything I wasn't. Outgoing, spontaneous, the life of every party. I was the steady one, the planner, the guy who balanced her wild energy with stability. But what I found on that flash drive didn't just break my heart. It shattered the perfect life she thought she had built. Because while she was busy betraying everything we had at her bachelorette party with not one, not two, but 3 complete strangers, I was at home picking out wedding favors and dreaming about our future. The worst part? She came home that night acting like nothing happened, kissing me on the cheek and asking about my day while I sat there knowing exactly what she'd done. That's when I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. I didn't give her the chance to lie, manipulate, or beg for forgiveness. I simply vanished. And what unfolded next? Well, let's just say karma has a way of collecting debts, and Sarah's bill was about to come due in ways she never saw coming. Let me take you back to the beginning, because understanding how we got here matters. Sarah and I met 4 years ago through a dating app. I know, not the most romantic origin story, but sometimes the best things come from the most ordinary places. I was 24, fresh out of college with my computer science degree, working at a tech startup and honestly pretty content with my quiet life. Sarah was 22, working in marketing for a local agency. And from her photos alone, I could tell she was way out of my league. Our first date was at this little Italian restaurant downtown. I remember being nervous as hell, checking my phone every 5 minutes to make sure I hadn't gotten the time wrong. When she walked in, wearing this blue dress that made her eyes pop, I actually forgot how to speak for a second. But Sarah had this gift. She could make anyone feel comfortable. Within 10 minutes, we were laughing about terrible dating app stories and arguing over whether pineapple belonged on pizza. What struck me most about her that night wasn't just how beautiful she was, but how alive she seemed. Sarah had this infectious energy that drew people in. She'd wave at the waiter like they were old friends, compliment the hostess on her earrings, and somehow turn a simple dinner into an adventure. I was completely hooked. We started dating officially a few weeks later, and honestly, those early months felt like a movie. Sarah introduced me to her world. Late-night karaoke sessions, spontaneous road trips, parties where I actually enjoyed meeting new people instead of hiding in the corner. She brought out a side of me I didn't even know existed. Meanwhile, I like to think I grounded her a little. I was the one who made sure she ate actual meals instead of surviving on coffee and excitement, who helped her organize her chaotic apartment, who listened when she needed to vent about work drama. We moved in together after about a year and a half. Sarah's lease was up, and we were practically living together anyway. She had a drawer at my place. I had a toothbrush at hers. It felt natural, easy. We found this perfect 2-bedroom apartment with huge windows and a little balcony where we'd drink coffee on Sunday mornings. Sarah filled it with plants and colorful throw pillows, while I contributed my gaming setup and a bookshelf that actually organized our shared collection. Our families loved each other, which felt like a miracle. My parents, who are pretty traditional and reserved, were completely charmed by Sarah's warmth and enthusiasm. She'd show up to family dinners with homemade desserts and somehow get my dad talking about his college football days for hours. Her parents, Linda and Mark, welcomed me like I'd always been part of the family. Mark and I bonded over our shared love of terrible action movies, while Linda would corner me in the kitchen to share embarrassing Sarah stories from high school. The proposal happened last year during a weekend trip to the mountains. We'd rented this cabin by a lake, and Sarah was out on the dock taking photos of the sunset. I'd been carrying the ring around for 2 months, waiting for the perfect moment, and watching her laugh at something on her phone while the golden light hit her hair. That was it. That was my moment. When I got down on one knee, she actually dropped her phone in the lake. Her yes was so loud that people in the cabin next door started cheering. Planning the wedding was everything I expected, and more. Sarah threw herself into it with the same enthusiasm she brought to everything else. She had Pinterest boards for centerpieces, spreadsheets comparing caterers, and strong opinions about whether we needed a chocolate fountain. I mostly went along with her ideas because seeing her excited made me happy, though I did put my foot down on the butterfly release she wanted during the ceremony. We'd set the date for late September, about 8 months after the proposal. The venue was this beautiful garden estate about an hour outside the city. Sarah fell in love with it the moment we walked through the gates. We'd booked the photographer, the band, the florist. I'd already picked up my tux, and Sarah had gone through 3 dress fittings. The guest list was finalized at 150 people, and we'd already gotten most of our RSVPs back. Looking back now, I can see there were probably signs I missed or chose to ignore. Sarah had always been social. More social than me, anyway. She had this tight group of girlfriends from college who were all still single and living their best party lives. Jessica, her maid of honor, was the ringleader of the group. I'd never particularly liked Jessica. She had this way of making comments that felt like digs wrapped in jokes. She'd say things like, "Enjoy your freedom while you can, Sarah," or "Marriage is just a piece of paper anyway." But Sarah would always laugh it off, and I figured it was just Jessica being Jessica. Sarah's other friends, Emma, Chloe, and Rachel, seemed nice enough, though they definitely enabled each other's more impulsive decisions. There were nights when Sarah would come home from girls' nights a little too drunk, with stories about dancing on tables or getting free drinks from random guys. I'd tease her about it, but I trusted her completely. That trust, as it turns out, was my biggest mistake. 3 weeks before our wedding, with the final head count submitted and my bachelor party already behind me, Sarah's bachelorette party was scheduled for the weekend. Jessica had planned the whole thing, a weekend in Vegas, which should have been my first red flag. But Sarah was so excited, and I wanted her to have fun with her friends before we started our married life together. I had no idea that weekend would end everything. To really understand how everything fell apart, you need to know the players in this story, because looking back, the warning signs were there. I just chose to ignore them. Sarah was the kind of person who lit up every room she entered. She had this magnetic personality that drew people to her like moths to a flame. In college, she'd been the social coordinator for her sorority, the one who planned the parties everyone talked about for months. Even at 26, she still had that same energy. She thrived on attention, on being the center of the action, and honestly, I loved that about her. It made me feel special that someone so vibrant had chosen quiet, steady me. But Sarah also had this need for validation that I didn't fully understand until it was too late. She'd get genuinely upset if a social media post didn't get enough likes, or if she wasn't invited to something she thought she should be included in. She measured her worth by how much fun she was having and how much other people wanted to be around her. I thought it was just confidence, but now I realize it was something deeper, an insecurity that no amount of attention could ever really fill. Then there was Jessica, Sarah's maid of honor and best friend since freshman year of college. If Sarah was the sun, Jessica was the gravitational force that kept their entire friend group orbiting around drama. She was beautiful in that sharp, intimidating way, always perfectly dressed, always ready with a cutting comment disguised as a joke. Jessica worked in PR for a high-end fashion brand, and she carried herself like she was doing everyone a favor just by being there. What bothered me most about Jessica wasn't her attitude. It was her influence over Sarah. Whenever Jessica was around, Sarah became a different person. More reckless, more willing to push boundaries, more concerned with proving she was still fun and spontaneous. Jessica had never been in a serious relationship, and she wore that like a badge of honor. She'd make comments about how marriage was settling, and how Sarah was too young to tie herself down. I remember one particular dinner about 6 months before the wedding where Jessica spent the entire evening talking about her latest dating adventures, how she'd been seeing 3 different guys and none of them knew about the others. Sarah was hanging on every word, laughing and asking for details, while I sat there feeling increasingly uncomfortable. When we got home that night, Sarah was unusually quiet, and when I asked what was wrong, she said, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm missing out on something." That comment stuck with me, but when I brought it up the next day, Sarah brushed it off. "I was just tired," she said. "Jessica's stories are entertaining, but I don't want that life. I want our life." I believed her because I wanted to believe her. The rest of Sarah's friend group enabled this dynamic. Emma was the follower, always agreeing with whatever Jessica said. Chloe was the wild card, the one who'd suggest the most outrageous ideas just to see if anyone would go along with them. Rachel was probably the most level-headed of the bunch, but she had this way of staying quiet when she should have spoken up. Together, they created this echo chamber where any behavior was justified as long as it was fun. Our relationship dynamic had always been that I was the anchor and Sarah was the sail. She'd come home from work stressed about a difficult client, and I'd listen and help her problem solve. She'd get excited about some new adventure she wanted to try, and I'd figure out how to make it happen safely and affordably. When she got too drunk at parties, I'd make sure she got home okay. When she overspent on shopping sprees, I'd help her adjust her budget. I thought I was being supportive, but looking back, I was enabling her to avoid consequences. The warning signs were subtle at first. Sarah started going out more frequently with her friends, especially as the wedding got closer. She'd say she needed to get it out of her system before becoming a married woman, which should have been a red flag. But I interpreted it as pre-wedding jitters. Everyone told me it was normal for brides to act a little crazy before their big day. There were nights when she'd come home later than expected, with stories that didn't quite add up. She'd say they went to dinner and then one bar, but she'd be stumbling drunk and smell like she'd been chain smoking, even though none of her friends smoked. When I'd ask for details about her night, she'd get defensive. "Why are you interrogating me?" she'd say. "Can't I just have fun with my friends without giving you a play-by-play?" I started noticing changes in her phone habits too. Sarah had always been pretty open with her phone. She'd hand it to me to look up directions or show me funny videos. But in the months leading up to the wedding, she became protective of it. She'd take it with her to the bathroom, sleep with it face down, and get jumpy if I was nearby when she got notifications. When I mentioned it, she said Jessica had been sending her embarrassing maid of honor speech drafts, and she didn't want me to see them and ruin the surprise. The bachelor and bachelorette parties were planned for the same weekend, 3 weeks before the wedding. My friends and I were doing a low-key weekend at a lake house. Fishing, poker, probably too much beer, but nothing crazy. Sarah's party, on the other hand, was Jessica's masterpiece. A long weekend in Vegas, complete with VIP club reservations, a private cabana at a pool party, and what Jessica kept calling the full Vegas experience. I'll admit, I was nervous about it. Not because I didn't trust Sarah, but because I didn't trust Jessica's definition of harmless fun. The week before they left, I tried to bring up my concerns without sounding controlling. "Just promise me you'll be careful," I said. "Vegas has a way of making people do things they wouldn't normally do." Sarah laughed and kissed me. "Baby, you worry too much. It's just a few days with the girls. We'll probably spend most of the time by the pool complaining about how expensive everything is." She paused and looked at me seriously. "I love you, Jake. Nothing is going to change that. In 3 weeks, I'm going to be your wife, and this will all just be a funny memory." But Tudo Kamso Amudar, quando that package, showed up at our door. The Thursday after their Vegas weekend, I was supposed to work late, but our client meeting got canceled at the last minute. I decided to surprise Sarah by coming home early and cooking her favorite pasta dish. She'd been exhausted since getting back from Vegas, sleeping in, moving slowly, claiming she was still recovering from the time change and all the activities. That's when I saw the package sitting by our front door, and my life changed forever. The package was small, wrapped in shimmery pink paper with a bow that screamed bachelorette party. At first glance, it looked innocent enough, probably some leftover party favors or a gag gift from one of the girls. The tag attached to it read, "For the bride who lived her best life, XOXO, Jess." In Jessica's unmistakable handwriting, complete with little heart doodles. I stood there in our hallway, keys still in my hand, staring at this innocent-looking package. Sarah wasn't supposed to be home for another 2 hours, and something about finding it just sitting there felt off. Why hadn't Jessica just given it to Sarah directly? They'd all flown back together on Monday, and it was now Thursday. Why the mysterious delivery? My rational mind kicked in first. It's probably nothing, I told myself. Maybe it's photos from the trip, or some silly Vegas souvenir Jessica forgot to give her. Sarah and her friends were always exchanging random gifts and inside jokes. I should just leave it for her to open when she gets home. But I couldn't shake this nagging feeling in my gut. Maybe it was the way Sarah had been acting since she got back from Vegas. Distant, distracted, almost guilty about something. When I'd asked her about the trip, her stories were vague and disjointed. "Oh, typical Vegas stuff. We gambled a little, saw a show, drank too much." When I pressed for details, she'd change the subject or suddenly remember something she needed to do. I carried the package inside and set it on our kitchen counter, staring at it while I made myself a sandwich. The rational part of my brain was having a full-scale war with my curiosity. Opening someone else's mail was wrong. It was a violation of privacy. Sarah would be furious if she found out. But then again, we were getting married in 3 weeks. We shared everything. Bank accounts, passwords, dreams, fears. We talked about how marriage meant no secrets, complete transparency. If it was truly innocent, Sarah wouldn't mind me seeing it, right? 20 minutes later, I was carefully peeling back the tape, telling myself I'd just take a quick peek and then rewrap it perfectly. Sarah would never know. Inside the wrapping was a small gift bag filled with typical bachelorette party memorabilia. There was a plastic tiara with bride written in glittery letters, a sash that said "Last Night of Freedom," some confetti shaped like tiny penises, the usual tacky stuff you'd expect. I almost laughed with relief. "See," I told myself, "you were being paranoid for nothing." But then my fingers hit something else at the bottom of the bag. A small manila envelope, sealed with "Private Soot for Sarah's eyes only" written across it in Jessica's handwriting. My stomach dropped. I held the envelope for what felt like an eternity, my hands actually shaking. This was it, the point of no return. I could put everything back, pretend I never saw it, and go on with my life blissfully ignorant. Or I could open it and potentially discover something that would change everything. The envelope wasn't sealed very well. The flap lifted easily, and inside were 2 things, a small flash drive and a folded piece of paper. I unfolded the note first. "Sarah, OMG. I can't believe you actually did it. You were incredible. I told you Vegas would set you free. Don't feel guilty about anything. You deserved every second of fun. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? But I had to get you this little souvenir so you'd never forget the most epic bachelorette party in history. Watch it whenever you need, to remember how amazing you are. Love you, babe. Jess." My hands were trembling as I read it twice, then 3 times. The words "You actually did it and don't feel guilty?" kept jumping out at me. Did what? What was she not supposed to feel guilty about? The flash drive felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my palm. I knew I shouldn't look. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to put it back, to trust my fiancé, to believe that whatever was on there was innocent. But Jessica's note had this tone of conspiracy, of shared secrets, that made my skin crawl. I walked to my laptop like I was walking to my own execution. The flash drive contained one folder labeled Sarah's Vegas Adventure with about a dozen video files. My cursor hovered over the first one for a full minute before I finally clicked. The video started innocently enough. It was clearly taken at some upscale restaurant in Vegas. I could see the girls sitting around a table, laughing and toasting with champagne. Sarah looked beautiful, radiant even, wearing a white dress I'd never seen before. She was glowing with happiness, and for a moment, I felt guilty for doubting her. But as I watched more clips, the tone shifted. The next video showed them at what was obviously a male strip club. The girls were screaming and cheering as muscular men in barely their outfits danced around them. Sarah was front and center, dollar bills in her hand, laughing hysterically as one of the dancers focused his attention on her. I told myself this was still normal bachelorette party behavior. Uncomfortable for me to watch, sure, but not relationship ending. Lots of brides went to strip clubs for their bachelorette parties. It was practically a tradition. The third video made my stomach turn. Sarah was on stage with one of the strippers, and they were dancing together. But it wasn't just dancing. She was grinding against him, her hands all over his chest, while her friends cheered her on from the audience. The look on her face wasn't just fun or excitement. It was pure lust. "Get it, girl." I could hear Jessica's voice clearly over the music. "Show him what he's missing." What he's missing? Who was he? Was she talking about me? But it was the fourth video that destroyed me completely. The scene had shifted. They were no longer at the strip club, but in what looked like a high-end hotel suite. Sarah was sitting on a couch between two men I'd never seen before, not the strippers from earlier, but regular guys in expensive clothes. A third man was sitting across from them, and all three were clearly flirting with her. Sarah wasn't just allowing it, she was actively participating. She was touching their arms, laughing at their jokes, leaning into them in ways that made my chest feel like it was caving in. The camera was shaky, obviously being held by someone who'd been drinking, but I could see everything clearly enough. "Sarah's getting her last taste of freedom?" Jessica's voice again, slurred but delighted. "You go, girl. Live your best life." I watched in horror as one of the men leaned in and kissed Sarah. Not a peck on the cheek, not an innocent friendly kiss, but a deep, passionate kiss that she returned enthusiastically. The other men moved closer, and suddenly she was surrounded, being kissed and touched by all three of them while her friends cheered in the background. The video cut off abruptly, but there was one more file. The timestamp showed it was taken several hours later. This one was just audio over a black screen, but I could hear Jessica's voice clearly. "I can't believe you actually went through with it. All three of them. You're my hero." And then Sarah's voice, slightly slurred but unmistakably hers. "What Jake doesn't know won't hurt him." This was exactly what I needed. I slammed the laptop shut so hard I'm surprised I didn't break the screen. I sat there in our kitchen, in the home we'd built together, surrounded by wedding planning materials and photos of our happy life, feeling like my entire world had just collapsed. The woman I'd planned to marry in 3 weeks, the woman I'd trusted completely, had not only cheated on me, but had done it with multiple men while her friends filmed it like some kind of trophy. The worst part wasn't even the physical betrayal. It was the premeditation of it all. This wasn't a drunken mistake or a moment of weakness. Jessica's note, the videos, Sarah's own words. This had been planned. They'd gone to Vegas with the explicit intention of giving Sarah one last taste of freedom, and she'd embraced it completely. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the closed laptop. It could have been minutes or hours. All I knew was that when I heard Sarah's key in the lock, something inside me had fundamentally changed. "Hey, babe," she called out, her voice bright and cheerful. "You're home early. How was your day?" She walked into the kitchen, still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with, and kissed me on the cheek like she had 1,000 times before. But now I knew the truth. Now I knew that the lips kissing me had been on 3 other men just days ago. "It was fine," I managed to say, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. "How was yours?" "Good. Boring, but good. I'm still so tired from Vegas. I think I'm getting too old for that kind of partying." She laughed and started rummaging through the refrigerator. "What do you want for dinner?" I watched her move around our kitchen, acting like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just destroyed our entire relationship, and I realized something that chilled me to the bone. She was a completely different person than I'd thought. The woman I'd fallen in love with, the woman I'd planned to spend my life with, didn't exist. She was just a character Sarah had been playing. That night, as she slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision that would change both our lives forever. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to give her the chance to lie, to manipulate the situation, or to make me feel like I was overreacting. I was going to disappear. That night was the longest of my life. I lay there next to Sarah, listening to her breathe peacefully while my mind raced through every possible scenario. Part of me wanted to wake her up right then and there, to shove the laptop in her face and demand an explanation. But every time I looked at her sleeping so soundly, without a care in the world, I felt this cold rage settle deeper into my chest. She wasn't losing sleep over what she'd done. She wasn't tossing and turning with guilt or regret. She was sleeping like a baby while I felt like my entire world was crumbling around me. By 3 a.m., I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a dramatic confrontation. I wasn't going to let her cry and beg and promise it would never happen again. I wasn't going to listen to her blame the alcohol, or Jessica, or Vegas, or anything else except her own choices, because that's what this was, a choice. Multiple choices, actually, each one a deliberate step away from our relationship, and toward those 3 strangers. I slipped out of bed and went to the living room, where I started making a mental inventory of what I needed to do. The wedding was in 3 weeks, which meant I had vendors to cancel, deposits to forfeit, and a lot of people who were going to want explanations I wasn't ready to give. But first, I needed to get out of this apartment before Sarah woke up and I had to look at her face again. The next morning, Sarah's alarm went off at 7 a.m. like always. She hit snooze twice, also like always, then stumbled to the bathroom for her shower. I pretended to be asleep, listening to her morning routine, the hairdryer, the coffee maker, the sound of her heels clicking across our hardwood floors as she got ready for work. "Bye, babe," she called out, like she had every morning for the past 2 years. "Love you." I waited until I heard her car pull out of the parking garage before I moved. I'd never packed so efficiently in my life. I grabbed 2 large duffel bags from our closet and started throwing in essentials. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, important documents, the few personal items that actually mattered to me. Everything else, the furniture we'd picked out together, the kitchen gadgets from our engagement party, the framed photos of our happy life, could stay. I didn't want any of it anymore. As I packed, I kept finding reminders of our relationship that now felt like lies. The photo from our first vacation together where Sarah was laughing at something I'd said. The coffee mug she'd bought me that said, "World's Best Fiancé." The engagement ring box, still sitting on my dresser from when I'd proposed. Each item felt like evidence of how completely I'd been fooled. I was almost done packing when I remembered the wedding planning folder we kept on the kitchen table. Inside were contracts with the venue, the caterer, the photographer, the band, thousands of dollars in deposits and commitments for a wedding that was never going to happen. I started making calls. "Hi, this is Jake Morrison. I need to cancel our wedding reservation for September 28th. The venue coordinator sounded shocked. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is everything okay? Can we reschedule for a later date?" "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's off permanently. I understand there will be cancellation fees." "Well, yes, according to your contract, cancellations with less than 30 days, notice result in forfeiture of the full deposit, which was $5,000. Are you sure you want to proceed?" $5,000 gone. But honestly, it felt like a bargain compared to what it would have cost me to marry someone who could betray me so completely. "I'm sure. Please cancel everything." The caterer was next, then the photographer, then the band. Each conversation was the same: shock, concern, condolences, and then the cold reality of cancellation fees. By the time I was done, we'd lost over $12,000 in deposits. Sarah was going to lose her mind when she found out, but that was her problem now. The last call I made was to my boss, telling him I needed to take some emergency personal time. I'd been with the company for 3 years and had barely used any of my vacation days, so he didn't ask too many questions. By noon, I was loading my bags into my car and taking one last look at the apartment that had been our home. I felt like I should be more emotional about leaving, but honestly, all I felt was relief. Every minute I stayed in that place felt like living a lie. I drove for about an hour before I found what I was looking for. A small motel outside the city that looked clean but anonymous. The kind of place where nobody asked questions and you could pay cash for a room. I checked in under a fake name and paid for a week up front. The room was basic but clean. A bed, a small table, a TV that probably hadn't been updated since the 90s. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I'd just done. I'd walked away from a 4-year relationship, a planned wedding, and the life I'd thought I wanted, all in the span of a few hours. My phone had been buzzing constantly since about 2 p.m. Sarah must have come home for lunch and found my stuff gone. I'd been ignoring the calls and texts, but finally, I decided to look. The messages started confused. "Babe, where are you? Why is your stuff gone?" Then worried, "Jake, this isn't funny. Please call me back. I'm scared something happened to you." Then panicked, "I called your work and they said you took personal time. What's going on? Please, just talk to me." And finally, desperate, "I don't understand what's happening. Please come home. Well, whatever's wrong, we can fix it. I love you." I almost laughed at that last one. Whatever's wrong? as if she had no idea what could possibly be bothering me. I decided to write her a letter. Not a long, emotional explanation. She didn't deserve that. Just enough to let her know that I knew and that it was over. Sarah, I found Jessica's package. I saw the videos. I know what you did in Vegas. Don't try to contact me. The wedding is canceled. I've already called all the vendors. It's over. Jake. I left the letter on the table and drove back to our apartment building. I knew Sarah would be at work until at least 6 p.m., so I had time. I slipped the letter under our door and left. On the drive back to the motel, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. For the first time in days, I wasn't carrying this horrible secret. I wasn't pretending everything was fine. I wasn't planning a future with someone who had already betrayed that future. My phone rang as I was pulling into the motel parking lot. Sarah's name flashed on the screen, and I could picture her standing in our apartment holding my letter, finally understanding that her perfect plan had fallen apart. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again, and again. I turned the phone off. That evening I sat in my anonymous motel room and ordered pizza from a place I'd never been to before. I ate it while watching a mindless action movie on the ancient TV. For the first time since I'd found that flash drive, I felt like I could breathe. I thought about Sarah, probably crying to Jessica right now, probably trying to figure out how to spin the situation in her favor. I thought about our families, who would need to be told that the wedding was off. I thought about our friends, who would want to know what happened, but mostly I thought about the future I'd just reclaimed. 3 weeks ago, I'd been planning to promise Sarah forever. Now, I was free to build a life with someone who actually deserved my trust. My phone, when I finally turned it back on the next morning, had 47 missed calls and 23 text messages. I deleted them all without reading them. Sarah had made her choice in Vegas. Now I'd made mine. The difference was I could live with the consequences of my decision. Something told me she wasn't going to handle hers quite as well, but that was no longer my problem. For the first time in years, my life was completely my own again. And despite everything that had happened, despite the pain and the betrayal and the shattered dreams, that felt like the most liberating thing in the world. The old Jake would have tried to fix this, would have given her a chance to explain, would have convinced himself that love could overcome anything. The new Jake knew better. Some things, once broken, can never be repaired. And some people, once they show you who they really are, don't deserve a second chance to hurt you. I was done being the man who loved Sarah more than she loved me. It was time to be the man who loved himself enough to walk away. The first 48 hours after I disappeared were chaos, but it was chaos I was watching from a distance, like a storm I'd finally escaped. My phone became a constant stream of notifications, calls, texts, voicemails, even emails. Sarah had clearly mobilized everyone in our social circle to try to track me down. Jessica was the first to reach out directly, which didn't surprise me. Her text came in around 10 p.m., the night after Sarah found my letter. Jake, whatever you think you saw, you're misunderstanding the situation. Sarah loves you. Don't throw away 4 years over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's what she was calling it. I didn't respond, but I screenshot the message. Something told me I'd need evidence of how they tried to spin this later. The next morning, I got a call from Sarah's mom, Linda. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Jake, honey, what's going on? Her voice was strained, worried. Sarah is beside herself. She won't tell us what happened, just that you left and the wedding is canceled. Please, whatever's wrong, you two can work through it. Ask Sarah what she did in Vegas, I said quietly. Ask her to tell you the truth about her bachelorette party. There was a long pause. What do you mean? I mean, your daughter isn't the person any of us thought she was. I'm sorry, Linda, I really am. But this is over. I hung up before she could respond. My own parents were next. I'd called them the night before to give them a heads up that the wedding was off, but I'd been vague about the details. Now they wanted answers. Son, my dad said when I picked up, your mother and I are worried about you. This is very sudden. Are you sure you're thinking clearly? I found myself laughing, which probably didn't help convince them of my mental state. Dad, I've never been thinking more clearly in my life. Sarah cheated on me, multiple times from what I can tell. The wedding is off and I'm not changing my mind. Oh, Jake, my mom's voice came through the speaker. I'm so sorry. What do you need from us? That was the difference between my parents and Sarah's. Mine asked what I needed. Sarah's family was already trying to fix things before they even understood what was broken. Just time, I said. And maybe don't tell anyone the details yet. I'm not ready for the whole family to know. Of course, sweetheart. We love you. But the real bombshell came on day 3, when I was finally ready to dig deeper into what I'd discovered. I'd been avoiding looking at the flash drive again, but something Jessica had said in her text about me misunderstanding the situation bothered me. What was there to misunderstand about watching your fiancé make out with 3 strangers? I forced myself to watch the videos again, this time paying attention to details I'd missed in my initial shock. And that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In one of the videos, taken earlier in the evening at the restaurant, I could hear the girls talking about their plans for the night. Emma was giggling about something, and then Jessica's voice came through clearly. "Sarah, you promised you'd go through with it this time. No backing out like last time." "Last time?" I rewound the video and listened again. "No backing out like last time." My hands were shaking as I grabbed my laptop and started going through our shared cloud storage. Photos, videos, anything that might give me a clue about what last time meant. Sarah and I had always shared everything digitally. It was one of those modern relationship things that felt romantic at the time, but now felt like evidence. I found what I was looking for in a folder labeled Girls Trip Miami from 8 months ago. Sarah had gone to Miami for Emma's birthday weekend while I was visiting my parents. She'd shown me photos when she got back. Typical vacation shots of them at the beach, at restaurants, looking happy and sun-kissed. But buried in the metadata of the photos, I found videos I'd never seen before. Videos of Sarah at a club in Miami, dancing with a man who definitely wasn't me. Videos of her kissing him. Videos of her leaving the club with him while her friends cheered her on. 8 months ago, right around the time we'd started seriously planning our wedding, I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't a one-time mistake in Vegas. This was a pattern. Sarah had been cheating on me, and her friends had been helping her cover it up for months, maybe longer. I called the one person I knew would tell me the truth. Rachel. She was the quietest of Sarah's friend group, and she'd always seemed uncomfortable with some of their more outrageous behavior. "Jake?" She sounded surprised to hear from me. "I heard about... I'm so sorry. Rachel, I need you to be honest with me. How long has this been going on?" There was a long pause. "Jake, I don't think I should... Please. I already know about Vegas and Miami. I just need to know how long I've been living a lie." Another pause, then a sigh. "Since her birthday last year. Maybe before that? I don't know. Jessica always said it was just harmless fun, that what you didn't know wouldn't hurt you. I told them it was wrong, but..." She trailed off. "Her birthday last year. That was over a year ago. I'd thrown her a surprise party, invited all our friends and family, spent weeks planning it, and apparently she'd celebrated by cheating on me. Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "I wanted to," Rachel said, her voice small. "But Sarah's my friend, and Jessica said it would just hurt you for no reason since Sarah was going to stop after the wedding anyway. She said marriage would change her." I almost laughed. "Marriage would change her?" "Rachel, she cheated on me 3 weeks before our wedding, with 3 different men, in one night." "I know," she whispered. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I should have said something. I should have stopped her." After I hung up with Rachel, I sat in my motel room and tried to process the magnitude of what I'd discovered. This wasn't just about Vegas. Sarah had been systematically betraying me for over a year, with the full knowledge and support of her friends. Every time she'd come home from a girls' trip or a night out, every time she'd kissed me and told me she loved me, she'd been lying. The woman I'd planned to marry, the woman I'd trusted with my heart and my future, had been living a double life, and I'd been too blind, too trusting, too in love to see it. But now I saw everything clearly, and Sarah was about to discover that actions have consequences, consequences that would reach far beyond just losing me. Sitting in that anonymous motel room, surrounded by the remnants of my old life packed into 2 duffel bags, I had a lot of time to think. Too much time, maybe. But for the first time in years, my thoughts were completely my own, not filtered through what Sarah might think, or how it might affect our relationship, or whether I was being supportive enough. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, though that cut deep enough. The hardest part was realizing how completely I'd lost myself in trying to be the perfect boyfriend, the perfect fiancé. I'd spent 4 years molding myself around Sarah's needs, her moods, her desires, thinking that's what love looked like. I'd convinced myself that being understanding and accommodating made me a good partner, when really, it had just made me a doormat. Looking back, the signs weren't just there. They were neon billboards I'd chosen to ignore. Sarah's increasing need for validation from other men, the way she'd flirt with bartenders and laugh a little too hard at other guys' jokes, how she'd get defensive whenever I asked simple questions about her nights out, the way Jessica would smirk when she talked about Sarah living her best life. But I'd rationalized every red flag. When Sarah would come home late and drunk with stories that didn't quite add up, I told myself I was being paranoid. When she started guarding her phone like it contained state secrets, I convinced myself she was just planning wedding surprises. When Jessica would make comments about Sarah being too young to settle down, I brushed it off as jealousy from a single friend. The truth is, I saw what I wanted to see because facing reality would have meant admitting I'd wasted years of my life on someone who didn't respect me enough to be faithful. It would have meant acknowledging that the woman I loved existed only in my imagination. I learned something crucial during those long nights in the motel. There's a difference between loving someone and being addicted to the idea of them. I wasn't in love with Sarah. I was in love with the version of Sarah I'd created in my head. The real Sarah was someone who could look me in the eye and lie without flinching. The real Sarah was someone who could plan our wedding by day and cheat on me by night. The real Sarah was someone who valued temporary excitement over permanent commitment. The most painful lesson was realizing how much of myself I'd sacrificed trying to keep her happy. I'd stopped hanging out with friends she didn't like. I'd given up hobbies she found boring. I'd even changed my communication style to avoid her accusations that I was being too serious or not fun enough. I'd been so afraid of losing her that I'd lost myself instead. But here's what I wish someone had told me years ago. When you have to constantly worry about losing someone, you've already lost them. Real love doesn't require you to walk on eggshells or ignore your instincts or pretend problems don't exist. Real love doesn't make you feel like you're not enough just as you are. The week I spent in that motel room was like detox from a drug I didn't even realize I was addicted to. Every day that passed without Sarah's drama, without having to manage her emotions or worry about her mood swings, I felt lighter. I started remembering who I was before I became half of Jake and Sarah. I remembered that I actually enjoyed quiet evenings and thoughtful conversations. I remembered that I had opinions and preferences that mattered. I also learned something about forgiveness that surprised me. Everyone kept telling me I should forgive Sarah, that holding on to anger would only hurt me. But I realized there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I could forgive Sarah for being who she was, a person incapable of the kind of love I deserved, without giving her another chance to hurt me. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't about letting someone back into your life. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of their choices. Sarah's betrayal said nothing about my worth and everything about her character. Her inability to be faithful wasn't a reflection of my inadequacy as a partner. It was a reflection of her inadequacy as a person. The biggest lesson, though, was about trust, specifically trusting myself. For years, I'd second-guessed my instincts, dismissed my concerns, and prioritized Sarah's feelings over my own intuition. Every time something felt off, I'd talked myself out of investigating further. I'd been so afraid of being the jealous boyfriend that I'd ignored legitimate warning signs. Moving forward, I promised myself I'd never again ignore that voice in my head that says something isn't right. I'd never again sacrifice my peace of mind to avoid difficult conversations. And I'd never again stay with someone who made me feel like I had to earn their loyalty. Some people aren't capable of the kind of love you're offering them. That's not your failure, it's theirs. And recognizing that difference isn't cynical, it's wisdom. The best thing you can do for yourself is walk away before they take any more of your life than they already have. It's been 8 months since I walked out of that apartment, and I'm writing this from my new place across the country. I took a job with a tech company in Seattle. Better pay, better opportunities, and 3,000 miles between me and the life I left behind. The rain here suits me. There's something cleansing about starting over in a place where nobody knows your story. The first few months were rough, I won't lie. There were nights when I questioned everything, when I wondered if I'd overreacted, if I should have given Sarah a chance to explain. But then I'd remember the look on her face in those videos, the pure joy she had while betraying everything we'd built together. And I'd know I made the right choice. Sarah tried to contact me for about 3 months after I left. The messages started angry. How dare I humiliate her by canceling the wedding without giving her a chance to explain? Then they turned desperate. She'd made a mistake. She was sorry. She'd do anything to fix it. Finally, they became pathetic. She'd lost her job, her friends, her apartment, and it was all my fault for overreacting to one night of fun. I never responded to a single message. Through mutual friends, I heard bits and pieces of what happened after I left. Apparently, when the truth came out about her pattern of cheating, Sarah's perfect social circle imploded. Rachel, feeling guilty about staying silent, told everyone exactly how long the cheating had been going on. Jessica, true to form, threw Sarah under the bus to save her own reputation, claiming she'd tried to stop her, but Sarah wouldn't listen. Sarah's parents, who had always been so proud of their perfect daughter, were devastated. Her father, who'd been planning to walk her down the aisle in 3 weeks, couldn't even look at her. Her mother, who'd spent months planning bridal showers and engagement parties, had to explain to their entire social circle why the wedding was suddenly canceled. The financial consequences hit her hard, too. She'd quit her job 2 months before the wedding to focus on wedding planning and being a bride, expecting to find something new after our honeymoon. Instead, she found herself unemployed, with no recent work experience and a reputation that preceded her in our small professional community. Last I heard, she'd moved back in with her parents and was working at a retail job, trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for her. But then I'd remember that every consequence she faced was the direct result of choices she made. I didn't ruin her life. She did. As for me, I'm thriving in ways I never expected. I've rediscovered parts of myself that I'd buried during our relationship. I joined a hiking group and discovered I love being outdoors. I started taking cooking classes and found out I'm actually pretty good at it. I even tried online dating a few months ago and met someone incredible. Her name is Emma. Different Emma, obviously. And she's everything Sarah wasn't. She's honest, straightforward, and secure enough in herself that she doesn't need constant validation from other people. When I told her my story, she didn't try to convince me to forgive Sarah or suggest that I was being too harsh. She just said, "Good for you for knowing your worth." We've been dating for 3 months now, and it's amazing how easy a relationship can be when both people are committed to honesty and respect. There's no drama, no games, no wondering what she's really doing when she goes out with friends. It's peaceful in a way I didn't know relationships could be. I still think about Sarah sometimes, usually when I'm reminded of how different my life is now. I think about the man I was when I was with her, always anxious, always trying to prove myself, always walking on eggshells. That man feels like a stranger to me now. The wedding we were supposed to have would have happened 5 months ago. September 28th came and went, and instead of being on my honeymoon with a woman who'd been cheating on me for over a year, I was hiking through the Olympic Mountains with friends who actually respect me. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you're ignoring red flags, making excuses for someone's behavior, or constantly feeling like you're not enough, please listen to me. You deserve better. You deserve someone who chooses you every single day, not just when it's convenient for them. Don't wait for a flash drive to show up at your door. Trust your instincts. Value yourself enough to walk away from people who don't value you. Sometimes the best thing you can do is disappear from someone's life who doesn't deserve to be in yours. And sometimes the life you build after everything falls apart is better than anything you could have imagined before. Trust me on this one. What about you? Have you ever had to make a decision that changed everything? Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted wasn't who you thought they were? Share your stories in the comments. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these experiences makes all the difference. Remember, you deserve someone who chooses you every single day, not just when they feel like it.